Hello, sisters. Welcome to Rising Feminine Online Temple, which is a 7 days initiation for a woman to journey back to her true essence. I am Jonita D'Souza, your feminine lifestylist, and the keeper of this online temple, where I have gathered visionaries from around the world to join forces to initiate you in your authentic feminine. And as you might know already, that a big part of my work with women is to invite them to indulge into everyday rituals. So in this moment, I invite you to create a safe, sacred space for yourself to receive today's offering. We have Sama Morningstar here as a guest today and a guide in our online temple, and we will be talking about desires. Before we start our conversation, let me tell you a little bit more about Sama. Sama is a queen of feminine embodiment and womb healing specialist. Her whole life has been the preparation for this sacred calling to help women reclaim their wombs as their central source of feminine empowerment so that they can live an abundant energy, vibrant health, and nurture satisfying intimate relationships. Sama loves to help women realize and remember that we are the queens of our own lives. We can make our own rules and generate our own vital energy. 20 years ago, she was in the pit of despair, longing for the satisfying, sustained, intimate relationship she knew she was designed for but could not seem to create due to unhealthy emotional and behavioral patterns she learned growing up. She embarked on a womb healing journey, devoting her life to learning how to liberate herself from those unhealthy patterns and create fertile ground inside of herself for the love she longed to feel. Now, after over 10 years at a tantric yoga ashram, she has emerged with her beloved of 14 years to share the essential wisdom she has learned so more women who feel that they might never have a satisfying relationship can finally create what they are longing for. Wow, Sama, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that.
What an amazing journey. What an amazing journey.
Yes, indeed.
I loved reading it. And before we got onto the call, I went into a quick prayer and I pulled up a goddess card. And I thought that's because an online temple cannot be without a goddess card oracle deck. And
Indeed.
I was tuning into your topic for today, and I know we have spoken before. So your energy and what we can create together in this online temple, and Goddess Mary Magdalene came up. Unconditional love, and I was like, wow, this is like so apt for what we will be talking about in all
Indeed.
aspects. And so I want to quickly ask you if there is any resonance that you feel right now with this beautiful goddess in this moment.
Absolutely. You know, what comes up for me about Mary Magdalene is that if we sort of look beyond some of the mainstream beliefs and ideas about who she was and the stories from the Bible that, you know, the modern versions of the Bible, and we look back into some of the more historical things that might have been going on at that time, that a woman who is independent and in her sexuality and self-empowered in her sexuality is and not beholden to any man is often called a whore. And especially in those times, where women were considered to be property of men. And so the stories in the Bible that talk about Mary Magdalene having all these different husbands and that she was shamed and all of this, but Jesus loved her, and she was, if we look beyond those stories, we see that, oh, what if she was simply just an empowered woman in a time that didn't allow for that? And that those stories were laid upon her, and, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that there was anything bad about her. She was a woman ahead of her time. And so I feel a very strong resonance with Mary Magdalene, because you know what? I can relate to that. Feeling like, I'm seeing things and ways of being a woman that aren't always accepted or understood in our modern culture, and yet we are paving the way and trailblazing into a new era when the feminine takes her rightful place on her throne.
Yeah, trailblazing. Yes, that's true. We are creating a new path, isn't it?
Yes.
So,
And Mary Magdalene started that, and it
exactly.
requires this unconditional love of humanity, because it's so easy to get discouraged about the disempowering belief systems that are held so rigorously in our mainstream cultures around the world about women. It's so easy to get bogged down and discouraged about it. But when we return to that unconditional love of like, okay, we are a species, we are a community that's evolving over time, and for all of us to evolve and the whole species of humanity to evolve, it's going to take some time. And just like a child, we want to love that child through whatever difficult phases they're going through, no matter what it looks like. So that unconditional love is a beautiful evocation for our exploration of that.
Yeah, and I've been studying something um, about the Magdalene wound that each one of us women are carrying inside of our, ancient heritage, and this is so profound about the unconditional love and the desires that we're going to talk about, and so interlinked to this wound that is in all of us. So before we go into our conversation for today, could you tell us how did you get initiated into your sacred purpose?
Well, it's been quite a long process. The first step, well, I'll stay in my adult life. I could go back, actually.
It's always a long story.
Right, to my conception. I could go back several generations to talk about but I'm just going to stick with my adult life here. So I realized I really hit that pit of despair that you read about in my bio. Actually, it's more like 30 years ago that it began, and it was really the depth of it. When I realized that I so longed for that relationship, and it wasn't happening. I was just repeating these same patterns over and over, where I would start to get into a relationship, everything would be flowing, and then 3 months into it, I would shut down. And I had several, and my sexuality would shut down, everything would shut down, and the relationship would die from that shutdown. And I could no longer blame it on the man that I was trying to be with, because 3 different men, the same thing had happened with, right? So I had to say, wait a second, who's the common denominator here? And so, my whole life had come to a place where I was dissatisfied with what I was doing in my livelihood, and I wanted to go back to my training in the healing arts and pursue that, and my training in yoga and pursue that. And so I uprooted myself. I quit my job, and I went to live at a hot springs resort in Northern California, where I knew many of the Tantra teachers came and taught their workshops. And it was a community where people were exploring tantric practices. And so I went to live there and immerse myself in the waters and immerse myself in the teachings. And I began, drawing these pictures of my womb and my heart and making the connections in the pictures, and just attending different trainings. But mostly where my initiation came from was directly from Divine Mother. I lived up on the top of this hill at the resort, and nearby was a rock called Indian Rock, and I would walk there and sit on that rock and actually have conversations with Divine Mother about the transformation that was happening within me. And I wrote a ton of devotional poetry to Divine Mother at that point, and I'm just working on getting that book together. Here we are 20, 30 years later.
Wow.
And that book is called Goddesses, Lovers, and Dreams. And it really walks through the depth of transformation that can happen once we start to reconnect with the Divine Feminine in a real way. So I don't know if I answered all of your questions.
Yeah, sounds like amazing that you going to the rock and having this conversation and you feeling the presence of something divine guiding you all the time.
Yes, it was, there were lots of influences that I was feeling with the people that I was around, and that community created a field for that. And the land itself, the connection to the land that I have in that location, I still live nearby there, and the waters there, it's one of the places that the Native Americans held as sacred ground. The Native Americans used to not live in this area permanently, except for the healers or the shamans would be here to support people who would come for visionary times and vision quests and things like that. So it's a location where the connection to the spirit world is very easy. It's very easy to have visionary experiences here, and to hear the voice of the divine here, and to reconnect with that. And so people travel here from all over the world for that purpose. And I felt very much called and placed here to develop that and to open that up for myself, to be able to be one of those guides and healers that can support others on that same journey.
Mm, amazing story. So let's talk about desires. I know we want to talk about the 3 essential practices. So would you like to guide us through these practices?
Yes. So the first practice about desire and really embracing our desire is embracing all of the feelings that come up around desire. And I know for a lot of women, especially, given the training that we've received or what we watched our mothers go through in the current culture, even just having desires for ourselves is taboo.
Yeah.
We are
Religion teaches you
trained and
that.
taught. Exactly. Religion teaches you that we are supposed to be in service to everyone else's desires. And even in more mystical or seemingly spiritual traditions, even outside, what might be considered outside of mainstream culture. Like I grew up Christian. It was very clear that women aren't to have their own desires in Christianity. And so I pursued studying, Taoism and Hinduism and yoga and non-dual spirituality. And there is, in those traditions as well, a deep-rooted sense that women are in service to the men, even there, in those as well. And so it felt like no matter where I went, until I started to study more ancient, divine, feminine culture, and connect myself directly with the divine feminine through the connection to the earth and to the land, then it was like, oh, of course I'm going to have these desires. And so this embracing of all of those feelings and which is the application, the direct application of unconditional love. Okay, because the thing that happens is when a desire comes up, and then these belief systems from the religion or the culture say, oh, you're not supposed to have that desire, and there's this judgment about, oh, you must be, whatever, you're not right because you have these desires. And so when we replace that with unconditional love, oh, I'm having this desire, I'm going to have unconditional love for myself in this desire, because there's also all kinds of difficult feelings that come up around the desire, even if you give yourself permission to have desire. Then for me, there were a lot of feelings that were even more taboo than desire, like anger that I didn't have the thing that I wanted yet. Anger is very taboo for women in my culture. We're not supposed to feel that. So then there would be like, oh, why are you so angry? You're not supposed to be angry. And especially with the spiritual practitioners around me that would say, oh, you're supposed to think positive. If you're angry, you're never going to get what you want,
Yeah,
And
you're not centered, you're not grounded.
Yes, but the thing is, our wombs have the full spectrum of emotional experience available, and there's wisdom and power in each one. So when we really embrace that, anger or envy has always been a big one too, because I was so longing for this relationship, and I'd see a girlfriend or a gentleman friend finding their partner, right? I'd see couples and I would get so envious, right? And then I felt totally spiritually inept for feeling
you
those
start to
feelings.
feel guilty.
Yes.
Feeling this way, yeah.
And as I'm developing this dragon of desire work and really embracing the fiery quality of desire, it becomes clear that, wow, that envy, that anger, that frustration, that despair, all fueled my motivation all along the way, just as much as anything else, in fact, more so than any positive affirmation that I ever did, right? Those intense feelings of doubt that I would ever make it, that fueled my determination, because I could not accept that maybe I would never have the relationship I knew was my birthright to have.
Yeah.
Right? And that fear that I would never have it, or that something was going to be too difficult to overcome, fueled my courage to step into whatever it was that I was afraid of. When I moved to that tantric ashram, I was terrified.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even tell you why I was so terrified at that time. But oftentimes, and many spiritual traditions tell us that we're not supposed to feel fear. We're supposed to choose love, not fear. There's all these spiritual adages that make us wrong, right? That make us wrong for feeling fear, doubt, anger, these taboo emotions. And in the womb work, all emotions are embraced, and all of them have value and purpose. And so awakening this dragon of desire gives us full permission to allow all of our feelings to be purposeful and to be sources of wisdom and energy. So that's the first, one of the first practices, is noticing when we are putting ourselves down, judging ourselves, or feeling guilty for having whatever emotions, and beginning to include those taboo emotions into what is valuable practice. Not that we're going to go out and try to be angry all the time, but when it comes up, oh, how can this anger be purposeful? How is this anger helping me? And how can I be with this anger in such a way that it's not harming me or anyone else, but actually being beneficial to me? So this applies to if you're looking to attract your ideal relationship, as well as if you're already in a relationship and you want to keep the spark going. Because if we suppress and disallow when we feel angry, then that in relationship, then that creates all kinds of problems. That is a good topic for another talk. But when we allow ourselves to feel the anger and allow it to transform and reveal what's going on inside of us, and to open up any blocks around communication that we have, like a fire burning and keeping it, keeping things moving, then we can communicate with our beloved and create change together when we allow for healthy anger to be part of our experience, as well as any of these other taboo emotions. So that's one of the first practices. And then, do we have time to talk about the other? Yeah. So the other practice that I wanted to mention that's really important is looking at the blame game and transforming the blame game. And this was important for me when I was growing up. That's all I saw my parents do, was blaming each other for their unhappiness. And so I was very clear I wasn't going to do that. All right. And so I have looked at and developed ways to work with that energy when it comes up. And when I feel myself wanting to blame my husband, for example, for something that's not going right, and it's a constant practice, I look at, okay, there's my finger pointing at him, and look at these 3 fingers pointing back at me. Threefold. So it turns into, the blame game turns into the mirror game. And so this is just one way of getting free of the blame game, and recognizing that whatever I'm seeing in someone else is a reflection of something going on inside of me. Now, this is a very complex issue, and in the context of this conversation, we can't go into full depth about it. But I find that it's really central it was central for me in, like I told you earlier, realizing that if I was going to have the relationship I wanted after this series of failed relationships, that I needed to take responsibility and go inside, because it was very easy for me to blame it. Oh, well, that guy, he didn't have enough of this, or that guy, he didn't quite know how to do this or that, and so he wasn't the right one for me, or that guy, he was unable to blah, blah, blah. And so, it'd be very easy for me. Yes, I could have a long list of things to blame the failure of the relationship on. But in order to open myself to a relationship that could last, I had to reverse that and take it as a mirror and say, okay, if he's doing this or that and it makes me feel like this, how am I making myself feel like that? How am I failing to give myself what I wish he would give me? How can I do that for myself first? So, for example, I often used to feel like the men I was with were uninterested in and didn't want to participate in my spiritual inclinations. And that was disappointing to me, because I wanted to have a spiritual partnership. I wanted them to do yoga with me and meditate with me and all of that. And I was always more committed to those practices than they were, so it was easy for me to point the finger at them and say, they're not doing it enough for me. And when I turned the mirror on myself and said, what if I'm not doing it enough for me? That was revelatory, because maybe I was doing it more than everybody else, but what if what my calling was to do it even more, to devote myself even more to those practices. And so then that focus was, okay, what can I get out of this situation? And then I'm benefiting from that situation no matter where it went with that relationship.
Yeah.
And so that's how the mirror work can come into play.
That's true. In my personal experience, I've noticed that every time I blamed the other person, I actually gave away my personal power.
Yes.
I'm just giving away my power to make me feel the way I want to feel, just because I'm depending on someone else all the time for my feelings to be met. So I'm
Exactly.
already acting as a needy person.
Yes. Which isn't very magnetic if you're trying to
It's the opposite.
attract
Yeah.
someone. Yes, exactly. That neediness is very much the opposite. We think that we're going to suck someone in our neediness. We want to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And yet
That has never
we're
happened
not
for
giving
me.
ourselves what we need. No, never, never. Me either.
In
They
fact,
run away screaming when I'm feeling
I
that
should
way.
say that a couple of times I was able to pull that through need.
Mm.
However, it
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel satisfactory later. It just
Yes.
felt like, okay, just because I forced this on the other person, so they did it for me. But it just didn't feel genuine, and I was still disappointed.
Yes, and so in attracting the ideal relationship, but also in our established relationships,
Yeah, absolutely.
it can really be detrimental to the flow of energy between us, and it's a big mistake that many people, especially women, make. If we feel that our needs aren't being met by our partner, to constantly be, poking at them or upset with them, or, making long lists of demands of them to meet our needs. It's just a spark killer, right? It just,
I was all of that, yeah.
yeah. And so learning how to take responsibility within that relationship and say, you know what, I'm feeling the need for this. How can I give this to myself? And if I need to make a request, and this starts to tie into the third practice that I want to share about, is if I need to make a request of something new or different from my husband or my partner, I activate the power of mystery. Now, this is a deep womb power of mystery. So when you think about the biology of the womb, okay, and how the womb is able to create a new human life, deep in the dark inside there's this, we have the moment of conception where the sperm and the egg meet, and then that womb holds that mysterious process inside of us, and for many months we might not even know that it's happening. We don't know what's happening, really, even with all of our tests and fiber optic videos and all of that. How this miracle happens inside of a woman's womb is such a mystery, right? And yet it's happening all the time. And yet we try to figure out exactly what's happening and micromanage, and we have all kinds of invasive processes now in the medical field that get all up in there and involved and cause all kinds of trouble. Well, that's the same as our micromanaging in our relationships. And what if we could trust, and this is a power that I've been developing to a tremendous, miraculously seeming amount of success in my relationship, is what if I can plant a seed in and hold it in the mystery and be comfortable with the mystery. So this applies to at the beginning of a potential relationship, or attracting a relationship, or something else that we're desiring deeply, to plant that seed of desire inside of us, which is quite different than many of the manifestation practices that you hear about.
Yeah.
And that people study, where they're constantly every day making this list and repeating and saying out loud and writing down this list of things that they're manifesting. And there's like this almost this micromanagement, and I need this, and I need this, and I need this, with the mystery of the universe. And so instead, I like to call it materializing. So whether you're attracting that relationship or you're in a relationship and you're wanting a change to happen in the relationship, we plant the seed and entrust it to the mystery. Whether it's a big change or drawing something to us. I can give a long list of examples of times when there were things that I wanted my husband to do differently, big ones that were causing me all kinds of anxiety and stress, things that he was doing that I wanted him to do differently. And I planted the seed and said it to him once. And could be a few weeks, could be 6 months, could be a year later, of his own inspiration, he would start doing it. Everything on my list that I had said that one time.
It's amazing. It's the power of desire.
The power of desire and holding it in the mystery, and the power of the womb to in the darkness, mysteriously create this new thing, this new life, this new creation, this new way of being. And then instead of like getting all up in other people's business or getting all up in the universe's business, right? We can sit back, put our hand on our belly and say, oh, look what is happening now. Oh, and be surprised and delighted. Wow, it only took 6 months for this one to gestate. Oh, wow, this one this one I said one thing and it sprouted up 2 days later and now it's in full bloom. Amazing. So you're just, then you see the different varieties and it activates all of these things that I've been talking about, because no longer are you blaming the person for doing it wrong. Instead, you're saying, oh, wow, I've expressed myself. I've embraced my emotions about it. I'm taking responsibility for where I can learn and grow in this area. And if I'm really doing that, then I get to watch someone else learn and grow in their own pace and in their own way and create, something new with me in a beautiful way. And it's just really miraculous how that starts to then build on itself.
That's true. And part of the feminine is to practice the principles of surrender and trust, and mystery is all about that, isn't it?
It is. And, the thing is, too, is that term surrender and trust both have been used in the past to sort of keep women in their place.
Yeah, as kind of a weakness.
Right, but also to say, oh, I'm, you are the woman, you just need to surrender and trust, and I'm the man and I'm just going to take care of everything. And I just want to make a distinction that, because that has kept a lot of women in abusive situations and denying their own desires, certain interpretations of the word surrender and trust. Yeah. And so I want to invite us to have discernment and say, this embracing of the mystery, there's a surrender to the process of birthing something new that we're actively involved in, and yet embracing the mystery. And so it does involve, like I have had to say the difficult thing, I would really like for our relationship and our household to be going in this direction. And these are the things that I see are important. Knowing that might not be received very well at the beginning. Knowing that I'm planting a seed that might not come to fruition until later. But I have to plant the seed. I don't just surrender to wherever it's going willy-nilly.
Absolutely. So, Sama, tell us about this amazing gift that you will be offering to the women watching our conversation.
Yes, I am going to be recording an MP3 meditation on the Dragon of Desire. And I found that the power of mythology and guided shamanic meditations is so wonderful to help us, because it's one thing to think logically about these things and say, oh yes, that makes sense. But if we're really going to implement these, something like some of these principles that are so new, getting free of some deeply held belief systems or taboos that might be stored and lodged in other areas of our body, we need to get our heart on board and get our womb activated and get these powers actually viscerally alive inside of us, and activate the feminine part of our brain, which is the subconscious. And those areas, the body and the feminine part of our brain, are activated through ceremony, storytelling, rhythm, altered states of consciousness, meditation, and all of these things. So I'm creating this meditation, this Dragon of Desire meditation, to support women who want to activate these sort of different approaches to relationship that will really bring it alive in their very being on all levels. And so then it's not this huge effort to do something different through just thinking, because the heart is on board, the womb is active, and it's starting to happen effortlessly.
Awesome. So thank you for your generosity in giving the gift, and also for your offering in this online temple. And the points that we touched, I think these are like vital for every single woman, whether in relationship or not, for her own desires and every desire that she has. Now, in one line or so, I'm asking this question to every single guide in this online temple, and if you could answer in one line or so, what does rising feminine mean to you before we end our call today?
Rising feminine means a lot to me.
That's why I said one line or so, because I asked this question and like I can see women getting excited, and then they just go on, and I'm like, yes, all right. But so go ahead.
What it means to me is it's a calling for us all to awaken our feminine power, to take our species to the next level of evolution and actually maintain the viability of this planet for our species.
Yes, that's an awesome way to end our conversation today. Yes, we all need this evolution, and the feminine is going to lead us, as you say. Right. Thank you, Sarah, so much for your time. I really appreciate all the wisdom that you shared, and I'm sure the women watching have taken this valuable offering and going to implement it in their lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Janita.